Welcome back to the Commercial Property Podcast, and it is my great pleasure this week to introduce Kevin Whelan from Wealth Builders. Now, I'm going to let Kevin introduce himself, but Kevin is a great friend of the Commercial Property Academy. I refer a lot of clients to Kevin and his team because I really value the advice they provide not only to me but also to my clients. So, Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for the connection. It's been a little while since we spoke, only about 3 days.
Yes, we do speak quite a lot, don't we? So lovely to see you. So, Kevin, I'm going to get you to do a little introduction in a minute, but we're going to be talking today about all things keeping wealth, aren't we? In terms of, it's great to make money, but actually sometimes it's just as valuable to understand how to keep that money as it is to make it. So we'll be talking about things like SAS pensions, inheritance tax, bit of a swear word, isn't it now, in terms of what the government's been up to. So yeah, so do you want to just give us a quick intro to yourself and Wealth Builders?
Sure. So I'm Kevin Whelan, founder of Wealth Builders, and the principle behind Wealth Builders is to help people kind of build multiple streams of recurring income to become wealthy, then how to protect that wealth by using the right structures, processes, and systems. Because you're absolutely right, Susie. The skill set required to build a good income or build good assets is not the same. So it almost needs, you need to rethink yourself. And then, of course, to transfer that wealth with great wisdom and skill and knowledge to the next generation who are taught nothing about this at all. And previous generations, of course, haven't really shared that, the silent generation as they're sort of known. So there's a lot of inheritance tax and a lot of quietness within families when it comes to older generation. And I want to break that model and try and encourage dialogue to happen between up generation and down generation. And when we spoke the other day, I just need to apologize, don't I? Because my voice is still a bit croaky, uh, hence the coughing. Sorry about that. But I'm just getting over a little bit of illness, but nothing major, just man flu. You know how it is.
Oh, I've heard it's
Anyway,
terrible.
it doesn't dampen my enthusiasm and passion to share knowledge and information in the hope that the distinction that I make often leads to someone taking a different action. And if that action leads them to build their wealth more, protect it more, and pass it on to the next generation, then I'm happy that's a good result. And I'm grateful for you for giving a platform to allow people to explore different ideas. And I think it was Robert Kiyosaki who said, the power of wealth building is always about making distinctions from different people. Because when you receive things with a single set of eyes and ears, you don't always get the nuances and the differences, which is why I think you're a great guide, a mentor, and likewise, I feel I'm completely committed to the value that I bring within the membership and the community of Wealth Builders. So yeah, and great to collaborate with you as always.
Excellent. Yeah, well, great to have you here, Kevin. Thank you, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Should we just start with? I know that you, without kind of wanting to kind of go down this route too much, I think it's a really important place to start in terms of making money, because obviously this is the Commercial Property Podcast. You have different pillars of wealth that you work with clients on, and commercial property is very much one of those, isn't it? Could you just talk a bit more about that kind of model? Because it is all about that multiple streams of income that you just mentioned.
Yeah, one of anything is very dangerous, whether it's property, whether it's stock market, whether it's business owners running a business. So to me, there's a big definition and an important tenet for the whole wealth builder philosophy, which is wealth comes from the creation of certainty, and certainty comes from having multiple streams of predictable income. And the more streams you've got, the less then you're concerned about changes outside of your control because you've got more things under your control. And almost everybody gets this wrong. They over-focus on one thing, and then that one thing can be good for a while, but inevitably, no one thing stands the test forever of influences from outside. could see what happened in 2008 with the credit crunch, and people going underwater often with property. We see business owners like my own father, who died very young, but he didn't obviously didn't predict that, but didn't have good structures in place to protect that business should the worst happen. And alluding to the stock market, I'm always concerned about the fact that most people delegate their wealth into the hands of others. And to me, that delegation is often really poorly serving them. Because if you put all your money rather, in the hands of somebody managing money in the stock market, and then the crash happens just at the very point of your retirement, instead of having a very large nest egg, you see yourself cracking eggs out of your own nest just to live, and then feeling uncertain again. Therefore, you can't teach how to be uncertain to a next generation. You've got to secure your own financial oxygen mask first, and that means having multiple streams. And some of those include property and business and intellectual property. You and I were just talking about intellectual property before we started recording, just about this whole idea of collecting, packaging, redistributing the knowledge you built over your lifetime and create value from that. And I think that's a very sensible thing. So many, many streams of income. And if we get a chance, can talk about all of them, but definitely don't want to go too deep too quickly. I've written a book, which I'll make available to you free of charge, as I always do, called The 7 Pillars of Wealth, the way that anybody can create multiple streams of recurring income. But the big skill is seeing income like an entrepreneur, where you can add value rather than hope somebody's going to deliver value for you. Because the big tragedy for me that I see out there is this delegation, which turns very quickly into abdication, is paying a recurring income to a financial institution or industry. And that payment continually flows to the institutions. They get paid before you get paid. They get paid a percentage of what you get. And if you lose money, they still get paid. I'm not certain that that's the right structure for anybody to build their own certainty and for that of their family.
Yeah.
Take
No.
control and accept responsibility to learn more and treat wealth in the same way as you're treating how you build it. So if you're building property, you get serious about it. If you're building a business, you're serious about it. Take wealth seriously. Don't leave it as an afterthought.
Yeah, there's some fantastic advice there. And I think just a couple of things to draw out of that. I think, the very first thing I learned in my surveying training was diversification is the best kind of strategy in terms of diversifying risk, obviously. So not only do you have pillars, but you're diversifying the risk as well. And you can do everything, but you can't do it all at once as well. If you're going to do commercial property, do it, do it well, move on to something else. I think it's dangerous. I mean, I'd be interested in your view on this actually, in terms of doing everything at once, because it can be A, overwhelm can take over, but B, actually, I don't feel like you do it particularly well. Go in mile deep and an inch wide, basically, rather than the opposite. And then the other thing is that I think I've definitely learned over the last 10 to 20 years in particular that there's only one person that I trust with my money, and that's me. And if I make mistakes, that's just part of the course. And I think anybody listening to this would be lying if say they hadn't made mistakes, because I think we all have. But you learn from those and move on. But ultimately, the only person that I would ever trust with my money is me. And I will then get educated and learn how to use it in different ways. And that's exactly what you offer, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'll make 2 points relevant to that. The first one is I agree with you wholeheartedly that the language I use is focus your way to security, meaning enough money, recurring income that if you have a day job, you could give it up, that all your main bills of life are covered. Typically within wealth builders, somewhere between 4 and 6,000 a month.
Mm.
Focus until you get there. Then when you get there and you built enough, that's when the diversification process really starts.
Yes.
Focus your way to security, diversify your way to real wealth. That's the language I use. Now, the second point is, when my father was a catalyst for me because he died young, and I didn't want to die young not being wealthy. So I vowed when I was about 29 to become completely wealthy by the age of 45. He died at 46,
Mm.
which I achieved. But the challenge for that for me as I look back on that was there weren't any, well, there's no internet for a start. There were no real books on the subject. There were no guides or mentors. So everything, taking that responsibility, was trial and error. So inevitably mistakes are made. But I think nowadays, where good guides, good mentors with integrity and they are worthy of your trust, can short circuit that process for you and can help you avoid many of the mistakes. You can't avoid all of them because
Mm.
by doing something, you're going to learn something. And I think both you and I come from that place of trying to help keep people safe when they're on their journey to wealth and also feeling not isolated, as I did at the start of my wealth building career. It was just me. There was no other person other than family, of course, and a supportive wife, but there was nothing really that was going to give me something to reverberate against, to say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And now I think it's really critical that people surround themselves with good guides, good mentors, good communities where the very essence of that is integrity. So unimpeachable integrity. If you can find groups like that, and there are people like that, and of course we know when you go looking for nice people, you're going to meet some. Well, it's like kissing frogs, isn't it? You're gonna kiss them along the way, and I think you and I both know people to avoid, but not everybody knows that. So, take a look at reviews, take a look at and make sure you get testimonials from people if you're going to invest time, energy, and money with good guides. But they are out there, and I'd encourage, don't avoid them, gravitate towards them.
Yeah, totally agree that with that wholeheartedly. And having somebody there to hold your hand and give you confidence to move forwards. And I'll also tell you what not to do. Just a little anecdote. I had my last board meeting of a series recently, and one of my board members was really hot to trot on a deal. And I basically spent a good hour talking him out of it. And I think sometimes, the stuff you don't do is as important as the stuff you do as well. So it's
I think that's true. In fact, I without going into the anecdote, I remember one guy said to me, "What I like about you is you save me from myself."
yeah, yeah. That's a nice testimonial, that one, isn't it? Yeah, good. So we making. I mean, we'd love to make that link available, Kevin. So we'll put it in the show notes, and people can get hold of the book and also contact Kevin as part of that. Making wealth is one side of thing, and then today what we're going to concentrate on is keeping wealth. So, it's pretty well publicized. I think you'd slightly have had to be hiding under a rock if you hadn't heard the budget announcements about inheritance tax. And we live in a rural area, so there's been lots of stuff going on with farmers, and and all kinds of things changing recently. Um, but I think the first thing would be really useful to talk about how to protect wealth vis-a-vis your pension, because obviously that's now coming into the wrapper of inheritance tax, isn't it? Do you want to kind of explain what's changed, Kevin, with that?
Yeah, sure. Precursor comment though is as you think about those pillars of wealth, those different ways of building assets that generate recurring income, every single one of them is affected by third-party influences, whether it's HMRC, whether it's some form of political decision or some form of economic decision. You have to be financially aware of things that will be likely to affect the assets that you're building.
Mm.
So when it comes to the pension asset, which is really critical because if you've got a family and you've got a pension, you've got to know about this because it's going to change the way you plan for that. Because historically, most people have relied in this country on pensions as the mainstay of their retirement plan. They'd work for a company, and you've had that experience of the corporate life. You build up a bit of pension, maybe you change jobs and go through different things. But whether you move on to build property or you carry on in a corporate career, that's for an individual to decide. But the pension is almost always a significant part of their overall wealth. And historically, that's really not been challenged from an inheritance point of view. It's almost been the real value in pension is the tax relief. So you get tax relief on the way in, whether it's personal income tax or corporation tax if you're a company. And then the money grows tax-free, which is great. Double compounding is amazing. Then you got the money out at the end. You got 25% tax-free, and there was no IHT, no inheritance tax. So for me, pensions were a very attractive proposition, notwithstanding different types of pensions, which I'm sure we'll get to. And over the years, I've piled money in. Economically, it just made sense to me. I can control my pension. I can control what I invest in. And I've got 3 grown-up kids. I can leave that money. So building significant sums of money pensions, significantly north of 7 figures, means you've got a confident plan until the government changed everything and said from April 2027, whatever's in your pension when you die will be assessed for inheritance tax. Now, that's not inheritance tax free anymore. That's now 40%. So if you take someone who's worked hard, built up a sizable pot, maybe £1 million or more, that's 400 grand of that money going. And to me, that was, well, it was a horrendous introduction for purposes of helping cover the black hole in the financial economy and an easy target because not only are pensions already well established and well documented, but everybody who's an employee has got to be a part of one anyway, because they're forced by law to be a member. So it's like, there's a tax take, and that tax net just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and swallows more people up, not just on pensions, but the natural drift of property values, the natural increase, albeit with some volatility, but generally up, investments in ISAs and other things, all of which will be subject to inheritance tax. And so as more people get caught in that net, unaware, like literally like a fish being trapped, they can't do anything about it. Because what I found to be true is when you talk to people about tax, that they're aware of tax. Everybody has got an opinion on tax. We all want to pay our way in society, and that's fine. But when you've got what I would call a pernicious tax, a tax that just simply catches people out, and there's rarely a time to plan, then there is no financial value that gets created the day before the tax bill is due. So if you sell a property, you've got a capital gains tax potential bill. Oh, okay, you've sold something, so you've got some money in to pay a tax. But when somebody dies, which is the tax on death on capital, there isn't anything that's happened to make more money available. So you get this double whammy of a tax bill people didn't predict and 6 months to pay the tax bill, which they don't expect. And in fact, it's never the business owners or the property business owners who pay the tax, it's their family. And if you think about what happens generally in life, people who are the me's and the you's, we're connecting with our tax regularly. We're paying our income tax bill. We're paying our corporation tax bill. So we're interacting with our accountant. When was the last time you did an inheritance tax return? You just don't do one. Right? So what we do is do them. We pretend, it's not a great subject, but it's a very powerful one when you think about the transfer of wealth to the next generation. It's them who are going to pay it. So you best be aware and almost act as if you're doing an inheritance tax return today to at least quantify the problem, which then gives you time to deal with how to minimize that. And in some cases, there are many techniques and skills, not loopholes, nothing that you're going to drive through which will cause a problem. Wealth builders, we have a language we use all the time, which is we deal with principles and precedents, right? If it's established in law and HMRC have already approved it, we'll do it. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere near it.
Yeah.
There are so many ways you can avoid inheritance tax or get it down. And it's almost always a long-term plan. And as it isn't a tax until, for a couple, till second death, because there is no inheritance tax to pay between spouses, don't get all the single people going now. We don't want people popping the question for non-romantic reasons. But the IHT bill, gets crystallized on death. If you're single on your death, and if it's a couple on the second death, which means for most families, once they start to think about it, there's possibly 25, 30 years worth of planning. And if you do that, you can get your tax bill probably to zero. But if you don't do the planning, you're just going to drift into higher and higher and higher tax bills. If you've got, like I've got 3 kids, if you imagine, 40% tax, then the tax man's going to get the lion's share of the estate and the kids will get less than the tax man.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And it's still unknown. People talk to me and say, is this coming through? Is this tax happening? Or is it still a proposal? It's happening. It's happening in April 2027. So, I'm spending a lot of my time now trying to get people to do an initial assessment of what their estate is worth. And you're building your wealth anyway, so you might as well know what your balance sheet is. That's what you would do in a business. So what's the value of your home? What's the value of your property, your commercial property, your pension now, the value of other things you've got, subtract what you owe, see what you've got left. Then if you've got a couple, let's say typical couple, you're married, I'm married, and so we take that as an example, you're on £1 million before there's a tax bill. That means it's a big tax bill. So you've got to be aware of that. If you're less than 1 million, you're okay for now. If you're 1 million or more, watch out for the drift, because that tax is going to come up later. But for those who are over 1 million now, we get to work and say, right, these are the things you can be doing gradually, not to be overwhelmed, not to knee jerk, but to get a gradual plan in place to either eliminate the tax, mitigate the tax, or make sure you've got assets ready that are liquid to pay the tax if you're going to accept the tax needs to be paid.
Yeah.
Short question, but a long answer. I hope that was okay.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so important that people understand this. And as you say, prepare for it for sure. So we touched on pensions, Kevin. I know that this is one of the routes that you can really start to help yourself. And spoiler alert, I'm going to mention SAS pensions as self-administered pension schemes because I've had one for 10 years and I've used it to build my wealth. So, it's obviously not for everybody and you need to kind of get advice on that. But could you just give us a bit of an overview in terms of the different types of pensions and how you can basically, in the context of what you've just said, how you can use your pension to help you with this new inheritance tax issue?
Yeah, sure. So I don't want to go into a diatribe on pensions because that will bore people and they'll switch off and they'll kind of shunt it for 10 minutes. If you imagine a pound coin and you imagine you just flipped it up in the air, how many different ways can it land? Well, there are 3 ways. Heads, tails, or it can land on its side.
I got that. Excellent.
And you've got a 1 in 6,000 chance that if you flip a coin, a pound coin, because it's got edges to it,
Yeah.
it's round, it's not, then it could land. So basically you've got 3 types of pension like that. If you work for a big company, heads, you work for a big company, pharma, corporate life, whatever, you've got a pension. And for the most part, those pensions will be either Um, for the most part now, most pensions are just money in a pot where you pay in, the company pays in, and in the end, you're going to have a pot which you have to convert somehow into income. Okay.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Bond Finance Limited, your trusted partner for commercial property mortgage solutions. Are you an experienced residential property investor about to diversify into commercial property, looking for funding options? Bond Finance can help. Whether you're planning to expand, refinance, or make a major property investment, Bond Finance provides expert advice with access to a wide range of lenders, from high street to specialist. Book a free discovery session today to explore how we can tailor commercial funding solutions to your unique investment strategy. Visit www.bondfinanceltd.co.uk and take the next step in your commercial finance journey.
Click it again. Tails. You've got personal pensions and SIPs where you've delegated the role of managing your money to somebody else. Now, both A and B, heads or tails, you've delegated either to your company and the people they trust, or to a big insurance company, and you're trusting them for whatever reason you're doing that. But there's a challenge, and I mentioned that to you earlier on, that you have to take, in my view, responsibility for your own money. And the only way to do that is to understand exactly how it's being built, exactly what the fees are, and exactly how you convert that money in your pension into income in the future. Otherwise, you're never going to be certain. So for the most part, let's stay with those pension pots, which are called money purchase or money in a pot. If you flip it and it lands on its side on the edge, then that's a tiny bit of pensions landscape, which allows for you to be in control. So you're not delegating the responsibility for the management of money to either your employer or to a third party. You're saying, I want to be responsible for my money. And that responsibility turns into then control. And once you start to understand that, that's the starting place to understand the concept of SaaS. Now, SaaS has got a very weird name, and you spoiler alert on it. And of course, lots of people have heard it, more people haven't. And certainly financial advisors never going to bring it to your attention for obvious reasons. They want the control in the recurring income, whereas we want you to have the control in the recurring.
Yes, of course.
So the small self-administered scheme, which was started in 1973, principle, precedent. Precedent, long established in law, principle, only for qualifying people. And those people are business owners. Strange as it was, there was data going back in the 70s that said business owners are putting all their eggs in their business basket, and they're not really paying attention to their pension. And sometimes the businesses don't survive, or the business owner gets ill or dies, and there's not enough money. Let's give them an incentive, and that incentive was to take control. So they could treat the way they approach their pension as the same ways they approach a business. So it's like turning the money that's in your pension into a business itself. And then you can invest that money where you would choose to invest. So that's the concept. So you turn your own money into an asset that you want to invest in. So if you want to invest in commercial property, you can. If you want to invest in the stock market, you can, but you can control the fees. If you want to invest in business, you can. If you want to invest in your own business, you can. So the scope of investing then widens so that you have more control over the return, the fees, and, as we'll discover, the inheritance tax as well. Because unlike any other pension, you can have multiple members in a pension scheme. Whereas those who flip the coin, heads or tails, Their pension is in their sole name. So there's nothing else you can do about that. But as soon as you recognize the concept of SaaS, you can now collaborate. And what you're doing with wealth and inheritance tax is treating your whole family as if it's part of a plan now. And this plan can invite in a pension up to 11 people, you plus 10. That's the law. Now, that doesn't mean you need 11 people in the scheme. It means you can have husband and wife. You can have husband and wife and 3 grown-up kids. So as you begin to start to see your pension as a plan, not as a product, then you can, make that take a great deal of shape. And for someone like you who's got an expertise in commercial property, if you've got your money in the stock market and you phone up your company, your old employer, and say, can I put that money and buy property myself? No, you can't do that. The computer says no.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got your own money, you can do what you want. And we can get deeper into the nuances of how much flexibility you've got. But I think if that gives an opening kind of summary of eligibility, you have a limited company, you can invite yourself and spouses or business partners, people you know, like, and trust, and you can form basically a friendly bank of money that you can use for what you want it to be used for. You can understand why, I think you were telling me as we started the call earlier on, that someone had told you, their financial advisor had said, oh, you shouldn't do a SaaS. And the reason for that almost always is nothing to do with what's in it for the business and the business owners and their families. It's what's in it for the advisor who wants to make money for funds under management. They want that recurring income, Susie. So they'll want to try and encourage you to stick with tradition, not to challenge that and control things for yourself. Now, I'm a challenging individual. I don't accept the status quo because you can't, because things have to change if you want to stay abreast of what's changing. And, let's leave it there for the minute, and I'll come back and answer questions specifically about why this is the best pension for inheritance tax purposes. But for now, I'm sure you can comment on how you've used that money for your own benefit compared to having just left it where it was.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've got a corporate background, so mine was in 3 corporate pensions, and I had no transparency on it. When I got I worked with yourselves, and when I got the statement of how much income I'd get in retirement from this, substantial final salary pension, I was like, excuse me, like, I don't think I can live off that. So, even a final salary for me, it was worth putting it in. Now, obviously, you've got to take advice on that. This is not advice, but for me, for my particular circumstances, especially because I know commercial property, I understand it. It's just been a complete game changer. I've used it as a bank, so lending into business. I've used it to invest, because I'm marching towards the age when I can start drawing pension, then investing within it. And of course, one of the huge advantages of commercial property is, as Kevin said, is that you can actually invest inside a SaaS with commercial, but you can't do that with Resi, can you, Kevin? That it's commercial.
It is commercial when you're buying something to hold inside the pension.
Yeah.
Which is we call the buy strategy. So you're using the money in the pension and the pension owns it. And then you're saying, my pension is going to grow by the ownership of commercial property. And why would that be a good idea? Well, you've got the FRI leases, you've got the long-term tenant, you've got a good secure income. As long as you know what you're doing, you know what that yield is. You say, well, okay. If I'm getting, reasonable return, 8% of my money, say, and I'm owning that myself, then if you've got £1 million you built up over your working life, then if you're getting 8%, that's 80 grand a year. If you were to go to a financial advisor with £1 million and say, how much do you think I should take from this pension, given the volatility of the stock market and the fees I'm paying you, it'd be 4%. Because it's the standard rule within financial advisor, which is called the 4% rule. You might get 5%, and if you gave all your capital away to buy an annuity, you might get 6%. But why would you give your capital away if you can get 8% and keep the money and still have the growth, the control, and the inheritance tax benefits, which I'll come on to? So I think the value for the right people is there to be explained and to be curious about. I'm not saying it's right for everyone. Of course, it isn't. Same as commercial property isn't right for everyone.
Yeah.
One investment that's right for everyone. There isn't. But if you've got control, legacy, ownership as part of your personal DNA, then I would say go and find out about this, get the distinctions from different people, decide who you resonate with, and maybe put it on your to-do list for 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll go back to the inheritance tax in a minute, Kevin. But if someone comes to you with that very question, kind of I've got this corporate pension, or even I've got a SIP, I guess. Both of those conversations I presume you have, then what kind of process would you take people through?
Yeah, well, there's a misnomer, of course, that goes on between SIP and SAS because they both start with the letter S for self. So I get that question a lot. And a self-invested personal pension is a personal pension. You're told what to do. So here's the thing. With every pension, a pension is a trust fund, and a trust fund needs trustees. And when you've got flip, the trustee isn't you, it's somebody else. So even a SIP is a personal pension, somebody else in control. Now, you might be able to influence that, but you're in the back seat. You're not on the front seat driving this, you're in the back seat.
Yeah.
That puts you in the front seat in control. Now, you can have a co-driver, whether it's a business partner or spouse, and you can have somebody being the mechanic in the back doing the administration that's needed. Like, how many business owners do their own books, do their own accounts? They don't. They delegate that piece because it's compliance, it's simple, it's not complex at all. And so it is with the pension. So with SAS, you can control the direction of the vehicle and have somebody else, to do that work. So how we do that? We first of all would look at the pensions they've got, establish whether they've got a business, establish what it is they want to do with that money, then do a cost benefit analysis and say, this is what you've got. This is, you mentioned, you read a statement to show you what your income is. Let us see that, right? That's the track you're on. What would you do with that money? If the government just said, pension, schmension, nobody likes them, just do what you want. Would you go back and put the money back in the stock market, pay the same fees? Would you do something? If you do something different, what would be your expected return? If you take that return, and because SAS fees are fixed, generally, not always, but generally, then they're not a percentage of your money. Then as you build your pot, your fees getting lower and lower and lower over time. And if it isn't a no-brainer, if somebody doesn't look at that and say, it's a game changer, don't do it.
Yeah.
And almost always for the right people. And we see that in their eyes and they get excited about it. And they've got some idea of what they want to do. It is a financial game changer. And it's not just a game changer for you, it's a game changer for the next generation because you can invite them in once they're 18. I'm not saying invite every 18-year-old, I'm not. But I'm saying because you've got a vehicle, family trust fund, that you can invite growing contributors and your future inheritance receivers into the plan, almost like it's a simulator, like driving instruction. You could start to teach them things or show them things that gets them to see the wealth of the family as something they should be interested in and contribute towards, not just entitled to do because they're your kids. You see the difference? It's like a bridge to the legacy. And that's another reason I love SAS so much, because you can do that. So that's the process we take. So if they're an eligible business owner, they've got a good plan, a reasonable sum of money, because it does cost some money to create a SAS, a few £1,000s, that lasts for 125 years. And as I said, if it's not a no-brainer, just don't do it. Stick with what you've got. So I don't disencourage anybody from being curious and getting the calculation done. And now with inheritance tax, that it should be a game changer still further, because with a SAS, because you've got the group structure, you've got some things you can do in there that you can't do in a conventional pension. So in a normal pension, whenever you die, that's it. It's going to be added to your estate. With the SAS, because you invited them in, you can cascade money from you to them. You can, what's known as earmarking. You can start to assign money. It's gradual. It's not instant. It's not like, oh, I'm going to give £1 million to my 3 kids. You can't just do that. But you can gradually transfer value to them in a meaningful way and in an approved way that reduces the effect of inheritance tax. And although we haven't talked about it because it's quite complex, the SAS is the only vehicle that allows you to lend money to your own company. So if up to 50% of the value, so whatever your combined pot size is in your family, say it's 400,000 between you, that means you can lend 200,000. So with that 200,000, you could buy residential property because you've loaned money to your company to buy the property.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the pension that's bought it. The pension just facilitated it. But if you imagine with that same company, you made your children the shareholders of that company so that they got some value, whether it's the growth value or the income value or a combination, like a family investment company, you're now combining a SAS with a different structure called a family investment company, and you're able to transfer value from your pension and freeze the growth. So when you're ready, when you've got that place where you're wealthy now, remember we spoke at the beginning about getting to security, then you get to wealth. When you get to wealth, you're saying, I've got enough money coming in from my multiple streams of recurring income to be set for life. Yes, I might need to be aware of changes, but nothing can interrupt that. And I'm pleased to be in that position. So yes, I'm peed off, but I'm not devastated by anything, which therefore means the confidence to be much more in control and respond to government changes is there. Whereas everybody else is flailing their arms up in the air going, this is unfair, but they don't know what to do about it. So the combination of cascading, earmarking, lending money to your company, linking it to other structures, which means you have to see your wealth as a combination of structures and systems, which is different to how you built it in the first place, which circles us back to your point at the very beginning, Susie, which was when you build wealth, it's different to when you want to keep it. And the keeping of it becomes much more about preparation, planning, and structures in ways that you can't do when you're just building it. So that's why, to me, SAS is becoming even more critical for those who care about the legacy, not just to involve them, but to actually do something about the tax bill itself.
Yeah. Fantastic tips, Kevin. Thank you so much. And we'll put in, Kevin will say at the end of this podcast how you get in touch with him and his team. And also we'll put in the show notes as well, because this stuff is so crucial. And that's why, we're running a podcast on it, because, you have to understand this stuff. And there's a reason why super wealthy people pay limited tax. I'm not suggesting we all want to avoid tax. That's not the name of the game. But there are legal ways of structuring things so that you can, not be financially devastated if the, as and when, because we're all going to die, let's face it. So, as and when it happens, and just not thinking about it, obviously now is definitely, in my view, a big mistake. So, Kevin, really great tips there, and I'd love for you, we're going to finish in a minute, but just give us a little bit of a overview on your new family wealth fortress process, because Kevin came along to speak to my community recently, which I think is what was it, last week, wasn't it? You came to talk to my community about this, and I think it's fantastic. And I have to admit, I was there with my notebook thinking, I really must give Kevin a call about some of this stuff, because I had probably 50-60% of it, but you definitely go to other levels now in terms of how you structure it. So could you give everyone a little bit of a overview on the context for that and what it does?
Yeah, yeah, I will do that. So the concept of the Family Wealth Fortress really flows out of some of the work that's been done in America. So in America, there's a concept known as the family office. And the whole family office it was established for families with 100 million or more, where they had a whole team dedicated to supporting the wealth of the current generation, philanthropy, as well as involving and protecting the money from taxes and teaching the next generation. And that's fine if you've got 100 million. Most people don't have 100 million. I haven't got 100 million. So most people don't get that super wealthy state. But we already established that through the tax net now, they're drifting into this tax net at 1 million or more. And at 2 million or more, your tax bill goes up, not just because you've got 2 million, but you lose one of the vital allowances in your home. You lose an allowance to give your home to your next generation just because you made 2 million. And that's just nuts. Anyway, so for families with the intention or already at the point where they've got more than 1 million, ideally more than two, then we've created this overarching, completely holistic, 7 integrated structure that puts everybody in the same room, acting as if we're running a family office, but not for one family, for 100 families. Which means instead of it costing £1 million, it costs a few thousand. The cost of having a PA, but to bring all the combination of advisors you need in your life as that complexity builds, to have them acting as if they're in the same room, working for you collectively, not on their own with their own conflicts of interest in a silo individually. I mean, think about it. How many times have you had a conversation in your life, or think about it if you're listening, with a financial advisor, an accountant, a lawyer, a tax specialist, a will writer, you know, a pension administrator? You can think about all of those things. Do they know each other? Have they ever met? Would they be speaking comprehensively about you? Or are they thinking about, this is how I'm going to make money from the next conversation? Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening. And I'm stopping that by saying, by creating this family wealth fortress, acting like a GP with a financial Hippocratic oath to only serve the family, no percentage of this or that, no conflicts of interest, commissions on this or that. This is the fee. This is what we'll bring to your family. This is the saving we'll make for your family. If people resonate with that, we only need 100 families to resonate with it. That will be enough for us to create this between now and April 2027, when we can help those families mitigate, minimize their taxes, and then start to put in place the combination of different structures, but not be overwhelmed by it, by feeling like somebody's talking above them, and having regular board meetings. You use the word board, I use the word board, but every 90 days with, this is what the board of this family are trying to do in the next 90 days, and putting slow, gradual improvements, marking the savings, marking the benefits, and then inviting the next generation to start to participate in that. So they become stewards of the money in the next generation rather than the spenders, which will almost always happen. If you don't give kids wisdom, you give them wine, women, and song, or whatever version of that is in your life. But that's the concept behind the Family Wealth Fortress. And I think, Susie, because it's something I've got to do for myself, I'm completely 100% enmeshed with the whole principle of building it well. And that's why I'm looking for 100 families to join so I can help work with them, not to be perfect, and because we're going to learn some things and we'll need some experts we don't currently know, but we'll build that expertise like a GP referring to a specialist, but making sure that the specialists are on our side, not just on their own side.
Yeah, perfect. Great. And as I say, just reiterate what I said before, I think that sounds a fantastic idea. So, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. It's always it's always such a pleasure to begin with to talk to you, but it's always really enlightening. I always learn something whenever we chat, and I'm sure everyone listening has done as well. How can people get hold of you? And we'll obviously put all the details in the show notes, but how can people generally get hold of you?
Yeah, well, I think the concept of building wealth, protecting it, and transferring it is a gradual process. So there's no urgency, no knee-jerk reaction needed at any time. So the starting point for me, for most people, is just connect with me on LinkedIn, because then it means we're connected in a community, and it means you'll see what outputs that I'm creating. That's easy. The second thing is we'll make some resources available if someone's interested and their interest is proximate. The 7 Pillars of Wealth book, easy. That you should definitely get that, because that will give you a sense of how assets are built. If you're into property or business, let us know, because we've written guides for SaaS, whether you're a business owner or a property business owner. If you want to know about the inheritance tax on pensions, I've written a guide on that. You can have that. I'm a keen writer, speaker, enthusiastic sharer of all of these things. And the Family Wealth Fortress, I've done a video on that. So I don't want to overwhelm people, but if the resources are available, pick whatever's relevant to you. Don't pick all of them. Just pick a couple, that you could do in an hour and a half, and that will help you decide whether you want to just follow or have a conversation, whatever might work for you. So hopefully that will help.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin. That's really generous of you. So we'll put all those links in the show notes, and please do pick whichever one of those is relevant for you. And that just leaves me to thank you, Kevin. As always, it's always a great pleasure having you on either with my community or on the podcast. I can highly recommend Kevin and Wealth Builders. Thoroughly professional and thoroughly nice people to deal with as well, which is always important. And we only deal with nice people at the Commercial Property Academy. So there we go. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. And I'm now going to leave, not feeling as if I'm just recovering, but I'm blushing from the compliment. So thank you very much.
As you should be. Thanks everyone for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next time.